So let's get to the legal aspects of this. Let's bring in State Attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Aronberg, and former U.S. Attorney and senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg. Chuck, I'll begin with you. First of all, having had the weekend to really take in the indictment and every aspect of it, what do you think the most concerning part of it is?
Sure. Well, of course, it's the retention, the willful retention of highly classified information. But what makes this case prosecutable, what puts Mr. Trump at so much risk, are the obstruction of justice charges. Let me explain that, Mika. The federal prosecutors, all prosecutors, always have to prove intent, that an act was done willfully and intentionally and not by accident or mistake. When you obstruct the investigation, when you mislead your own attorney, when you urge your own attorney to mislead the FBI, all of that demonstrates intent. Had he just returned the stuff, let's say you find stuff in your house in Indiana, like Mr. Pence, or in your house in Delaware, like Mr. Biden, and you notify the FBI and you cooperate with their investigation and you turn everything over and you are truthful with them, there's no criminal case. But here, where you obstruct the underlying investigation, you demonstrate for the world and ultimately for a jury, Mika, your own intent. And that is what makes the willful retention prosecutable in a court of law, where I believe Mr. Trump will ultimately face justice.
Let me ask you, though, obviously a bizarre appointment for this judge, Cannon. I mean, the fact that there are, I think, 15 different...
Is she definitely the judge?
15, well, that's the first thing I want to ask. Is she definitely the judge when I mean, listen, this is... I looked it up last night because, you know, I don't have much of a life. Mika thinks I'm a nerd by doing things like this. I want to read what the 11th Circuit said about this woman's decision earlier. Said, to create a special exception here would defy our nation's foundational principle that our law applies to all, regardless of numbers, wealth, or rank. The law is clear. We cannot write a rule, says the extremely conservative 11th Circuit, of what the judge tried to do before, that allows any subject of a search to block government investigations after an exception of the warrant. Nor can we write a rule that only allows former presidents to do so. Either approach would be a radical reordering, which is what they're accusing her of doing, a radical reordering of our case law, limiting federal courts' involvement in criminal investigations. And both would violate bedrock separation of powers limitations. I mean, I could go on, Chuck, but
why don't we
they basically say this woman just violated bedrock principles in the Constitution to try to protect Donald Trump. It was one of the most scathing rulings I've ever seen, overturning a lower court's ruling. And this person's in charge of the case? Does she stay in charge throughout the entire case?
Probably so, Joe. So the 11th Circuit, and I read their opinion too, was not gentle in their review of her actions. I read what she did, and I read what they said about what she did, and they had it right. Now, look, there's a big difference between a bad judge and an unprincipled judge. And I can't tell you right now that I believe she's unprincipled. She may just be a bad judge. She may just not be very good at her job. Look, there are dentists and airline pilots who are really good, and there are dentists and airline pilots who are awful.
That's discrimination. That doesn't make anyone feel better.
You and I both know that you've got the luck of the draw on this, and the odds of this woman getting this with 15. Come on, man. How did this woman of all women, of all judges, who again probably put down the worst ruling, again, the 11th Circuit, one of the most conservative circuits. How could that judge be assigned this? It seems far from luck of the draw.
Well, look, I don't know that it's anything but luck of the draw, Joe. I don't know that. If it's something else, if it's something nefarious, that'll come out. It always does. But here's my larger point about bad judges and good judges. As a federal prosecutor, you live with the judge you get. Some are very good at managing the case in their courtroom and their docket, and some aren't. If your underlying facts are sound, if your theory of the case is sound, if you've investigated the case properly, you're going to be okay. This is not going to turn on the judge, I don't believe. I may be wrong about that. Umpires make bad calls all the time. I understand we're not talking about baseball, but the best team usually wins. And I believe that'll happen here.
Last night. Certainly did last night, Jonathan Lemire.
2 out of 3 this weekend, but we don't have time to talk about that. Dave Aronberg, as you well know, the chief clerk of the federal court system in the Southern District of Florida confirmed that Judge Cannon this is her trial unless she were to recuse herself. So it seems like that's a done deal. Give us your thoughts on that, and also just preview us, please, what we're going to see tomorrow in this historic moment when a former president of the United States appears in a courthouse to face federal charges.
Yeah, Jonathan, I want to show you. This is the sheet where Jack Smith checked the box for the court division, and here he checked West Palm Beach, and that's why Judge Cannon had a really good chance at getting this. It wasn't 1 out of 15, Joe. It was 1 out of 4 judges who are in that West Palm Beach division, and then it depends on workload. So there's no conspiracy here. I know the clerk of court down there, Miss Noble, and she's awesome. She's honest, and this is a random assignment. It's just bad luck. And by the way, tomorrow, the magistrate judge who will be dealing with the arraignment will be a Miami judge, a guy named John Goodman. It will not be Judge Cannon, although Judge Cannon is still assigned. Oh, and the John Goodman is no relation to the John Goodman from the TV show Roseanne or The Big Lebowski.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
I was wondering.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing I thought of.
What does the magistrate do tomorrow then?
Okay, so Magistrate John Goodman, the DOJ abides, will go ahead and just deal with it the same way everyone else. He'll take the plea for the arraignment of not guilty. He'll set the terms of the pretrial release, and then he'll go back. Trump will go back to Mar-a-Lago. Now, here's the thing. The Department of Justice had bad luck in getting Judge Cannon. I agree with Chuck because, she made some very controversial rulings, but, she also knows that she was publicly humiliated by the 11th Circuit. She went too far, and this 3-judge panel within the conservative 11th Circuit, you cited it, they smacked down her rulings, and they took her off the case. And 2 of those 3 judges were Trump appointees. So you got to believe perhaps she's been chastened, and maybe she just will act differently, not wanting to get put in timeout again. But don't expect her to recuse herself. This is the case of a lifetime. She went out of her way to intervene in the case last year when she really shouldn't have. So why would she take herself off it voluntarily? If she goes out of bounds here, expect Jack Smith to go to the 11th Circuit to get her removed. But I don't think it's going to happen yet.